If federal buyers don't call you back, if they won't call you back, then how can you sell your products and services? Right? You can't. It's impossible. If you can't get a buyer to find you, to call you back, to engage with you in any way, then you're not going to be able to sell them what your products or your services, right? And that's what we're really trying to do, is get in the door so you can talk with the customer, understand them, and for them to understand you and what you sell and how that aligns. I want to break down why federal buyers aren't calling you back into three main reasons, right? And then I'm going to talk about what you can do. Starting a new relationship is really one of the hardest things in sales. Most of us, when we get into a room, we can have a pretty good dialogue about what we sell. We can tell case studies, etc. We can dig into somebody's problem. Sales gets kind of easy once you get in the room. Sales is hard, though, when you're trying to figure out, whose doors do you go knocking on? Okay, I know whose doors I'm knocking on, those leads. How do I sit there and get into those doors to have meetings? And that's a challenge that small businesses face, but it's a challenge billion-dollar firms face when they try to go knock onto a door that they don't have experience. So if a billion-dollar firm is doing really well at this command and this command in the Air Force, but they try to go over here, they're kind of back to scratch. Certainly they're back to scratch if they try to go over to the Coast Guard, the Department of Education, where they're not. They still have to sit there and start and build relationships. They still deal with the fact that sometimes people don't call you back, right? And they don't respond to you. And I really believe that if you adjust some of your processes that you have out there, that you're going to really be able to get federal buyers to start calling you back. You're going to be able to have those meetings you're looking for. And that's what we're going to dive into in today's training. I want to break down why federal buyers aren't calling you back into three main reasons, right? And then I'm going to talk about what you can do. The first thing is they're not calling you back because they don't even know you called them, right? That is probably 80% of the people, is they don't even know you called, and that's why they're not calling you back. We'll talk about that. The second thing is you didn't impress them. You didn't impress them professionally, right? When we make first impressions, and we're talking here professionally, when you're walking in the door, when they're experienced working with you, if you're not impressing them, then you're not giving them a reason to want to come work with you, right? There's 1,000 companies who probably sell what you sell. And yes, you might be unique, but if you're not impressing them personally or your company, then that can sit there and interfere with their ability to sit there and to choose to bring you back, right? And the third thing I'm going to talk about is they didn't see how you can help them. I looped it in today's training as value proposition. You want to be presenting your value proposition, and in order to do that, they need to see how that aligns with their need. They need to even know that they have a need, and we'll talk about that and what you can do to improve your chances on getting those second meetings, especially when you get in the door. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, the co-founder of GovCon in a Box, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I also provide you a community where you can sit there and network with other people. They're right there in the chat. Go ahead and say who you are, your company name. If you're open to connecting on LinkedIn, say so. I'm open to connecting. And if you see anybody who's open to connecting, reach out. I saw you on Neil's training. Love to connect, see if there's any reason for us to have a one-off introduction meeting, but even just connecting on LinkedIn is nice, because then LinkedIn is pushing all of our content to more people. So that's a great thing. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, go ahead and subscribe to the Government Contracting Success newsletter. We've got 3 articles already lined up for this week that are going to be really good. All of the content in Government Contracting Success newsletter is aligned to helping you succeed in the federal space. In particular, we try to focus on sales, understanding the customer and understanding the process to get in the door to talk with the customer. Last thing on this page, I just wanted to mention tomorrow we've got Matt Burkett coming back. He was in the Navy, now he's somewhere else, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. But he's going to come back and talk about innovation and innovation dollars that are at the local level and the national level. He's also going to be talking about some of the emerging technology needs that are out there and his tips for you, and how it ties back to the Navy where he was, because he hasn't stepped away from it. He's just stepped into kind of a new role. So make sure you register for the next training, Fireside Chat with Matt and me. I'll be there. Okay, so congratulations to the newest members of the 100 Club companies: Human Capital Solutions with Pete Mitchell, Analytics Logic with Nikita Koves. Got to tell me if I'm pronouncing that wrong so I can get it right. Up Agility, Barry Simeon. hopefully I got that right. And this one's interesting. A&A General Contractors. I don't know if I'm supposed to be or reach out to me. I saw you did a post. I'm going to reach back out to you. I really appreciated that. I just didn't have time to respond. But I wanted to talk about these 4 companies in particular. What was really spectacular, if you don't know it, by the way, the GovCon.com federal visibility score goes from 0 to 100. How visible are you to federal buyers? And this just means basically, have you done what you need to do in the federal buyers tools, in the federal government tools, to be visible to them? I didn't create some unique tools. I just created a tool that helped you see into the government's tool and then rank it to find out what your score is. So anyways, these companies, one moved it from 76 to 100, another was 71 to 100, another was 46 to 100, and the one that just really impressed me today was from 24. Their visibility score was 24, and they got all the way to 100. And it was amazing to watch because they didn't do it like 24 to 100. They went 24 to here, to here, to here. And they were just going in, fixing different things. An example of something that's affects your visibility score is they didn't have a capability statement uploaded. So they went and fixed that. Now the government, if they come to their profile, they can see the capability statement. Again, this is not inside of my unique directory of small businesses. We provide the tools that enable you to see how visible you are, but your visibility is inside the federal tools. So congratulations to these companies. Make sure you go check out your profile, govconinAbox.com. If you're at 100, by the way, put that in the chat. I'd love to see that. Okay, and so one quick question before I move, because somebody let me know if the AV is good. I have my cell phone that I use to track, just make sure the tech's all working, and it is not working. So I want to make sure somebody gives me a quick AV before I dive into the first reason people aren't calling you back. And in fact, I'll get started in this. The first reason I wanted to talk about on why federal buyers don't call you back is that they just don't know you called. They're completely oblivious to it. They've got a busy life already, right? So you've got to understand it, and as you go forward, you've got to respect the fact that sometimes people just didn't even know you called. Don't take it personal. And that's why my first bullet here is that it's not a conspiracy against you. There is no conspiracy in the federal government to hold your company down. There is no conspiracy among these vendors to hold you down. Even with the largest, as much as I say that largest don't care about smalls, I literally mean they don't care. They don't care to hold us down, and they don't care to raise us up. They just are there to grow the profit for the company, for their stockholders. That's fine. That's the whole purpose of a company that big. What I mean, though, is don't sit there and get caught up in this anxiety of they don't like me, right? Not just a conspiracy in the sense that they're against you, but sometimes we put the worst message in. We insert it in on behalf of the other person. Oh, they didn't get back to me because my capability statement sucks, because my email sucks, or something else. They just might not even know you even called, right? I'm not seeing in the chat anybody saying I'm good to go. So I got to, let me just text somebody. Oh, I just got a text. All good to go. Appreciate it. Thanks, Cecilia. If you don't know it, Cecilia's my sister. She's been working with me in the GovCon chamber since 2018 as well. Okay, so the next thing is, if it's not a conspiracy and you accept that, then you can accept some of the realities as well. Your emails, when you send them out, they can just go into the junk folder, right? So do you even know whether it's getting to the user? If you're sending it to a federal buyer, it might get blocked by the IT department. Thanks, Jim. It might get blocked by the IT department. It might go into the junk folder, right? So keep that in mind. Another reason they might not know that you even emailed or called them is that you could just be one of 100 emails. I get a ton of emails, and I get emails from people I really want to follow back up with, and it gets buried, and I forget that I want to follow back up with them. Literally, I could write down that I want to follow up, but then I'd have too long of a to-do list. And so you got to keep that in mind. If you're just one of 100 emails, one of my favorite things is to sit there and send another email, phone call, email. I trade them back and forth, but I send another email and I say, hey, I'm just raising this to the top of your inbox. If you haven't heard that line before, we've been using it since the minute emails got here. The minute emails got here, emails started pushing yours down. And so all you're doing is bringing yours up to the top of the inbox. I like to do this sometimes at like 7 a.m. so you catch them first thing in the morning. You might try it at lunchtime, but you just try it strategically, and you're refreshing your outreach to them to the top of their memory, and in this case, top of the inbox. By the way, did you hit the email? Let me go over here. Did you hit the inbox or the junk folder? Test that out with somebody who's in the agency you want to get to, small business specialist. Could be anybody. You can say, can I send you a quick email just to make sure my emails are getting through? You'll eventually find somebody. The fourth bullet here, did you follow up with a phone call? This is very big. If you are not getting people reaching back to you and scheduling meetings with you, and I'm talking about they don't know you called, well, are you following up with a phone call so that you're being different than all those people who were too good for phone call? You know, there's still voicemail. People still get voicemails. It's a fact of life, you know, and people might tease about it. Oh my gosh, I got a voicemail. I never get these. But what do? They go and listen to it. In fact, they don't even have to listen to it because it's usually transcribed. And in the federal government, they're going to listen to the voicemails. Are there times when the voicemail boxes are full? Sure. Let's forget about the exceptions for 1 second and just talk about the norm. The norm is if you're reaching out to somebody, reach out to them with a phone call, then an email, or reverse it, an email, then a phone call. Then last bullet, not did you follow up with 30 plus times, right? Follow up 30 plus times. I have a whole handout that I use about how do you follow up and how often and kind of what do you do? But basically, the gist of it is you're trading an email, then a phone call, or you're following an email with a phone call, with an email, with a phone call, with an email, with a phone call, 2 phone calls, then an email. You are not stopping. If you're trying to get into that agency, if you're trying to meet these people, if they have not talked to you at all, if they have not responded, you are not bugging them. They are either missing your communication or they are kind of acting unprofessional and they don't know that they should be responding back to say, yeah, you're not for me. Right? I don't get offended when somebody comes back and says, oh, you're not a fit for us. All right. I get sad, but then I move on. Okay. So the first thing you got to remember, if they're not calling back, if they're not responding to you, if you're not getting the traction you want, it usually is because they don't even know you reached out to them. So if you just are persistent, you will sometimes experience a contracting officer or somebody going, oh my God, I've seen your voicemails or emails. I've been meaning to get back to you. So glad we finally connected. There is no conspiracy against you. It just hasn't happened yet. Okay, so let's talk about the second reason. So in this case, what I'm suggesting is that you didn't impress them professionally. And this is really important. We'll get to the meat in the next slide, but federal buyers aren't going to call you back if they have a meeting with you, virtual or in person, and you're not impressing them professionally. And really, I put here, can we be real? And the reason I said this is imagine going to a doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, go to see a lawyer. Imagine if what you see is not that impressive. What would you want to see at your doctor's office? I didn't put it here, but imagine walking into a lawyer's office or a doctor's office and their desk is just completely a mess and there's just disorganized and everything. And they're flipping through papers and, just this whole thing compared to somebody who sits there and says, hold on, let me turn here. Oh, it's in this file or something, right? There's a difference between professionalism and unprofessionalism. And I'm not trying to be mean here because I believe professionalism is not a behavior. I believe it is a skill and we need to think about it and improve it. So an example is I have here, how were you dressed? Oh my gosh, today. And how were you spelling? Because apparently today is the day I mess up my words. I just a quick sidebar. One of my favorite things to see is when somebody sits there and says, it's really important you pay attention to detail and they misspell something in that. And that's literally what I kind of just did here. How were you dressed? When you walk in, right? Are you going in a, women, whatever your equivalent is of a man, but a collared shirt. I come here to this live training every single day. I work out of my house, but I'm wearing a collared shirt, right? Sometimes I throw on a sports coat or a suit jacket. I'm coming to you professionally and I don't even know you, right? I'm coming to you and that's how much I'm showing you that I respect the time we're spending together. And I do that with the other people I meet with as well. That's something you can do simply. Don't slide into this casual, so much of a casual Friday thing. Earlier this morning when I was just connecting with my colleagues, I had a t-shirt on, right? There's different levels of dress, which are totally fine. But when you're trying to get a federal buyer to meet with you, should pretty much be up there with church. Okay, how did you speak, right? Speaking, so there's one level of professionalism, which is just your growth in speaking, right? But there's another about, are you bringing energy? Are you seeming confident in what you're saying? Or are you there basically subordinating yourself to them? You need to give them confidence in your company and the solution and products your company offers. And that begins with how you're communicating with them. I don't mean, do you have ums in there or other things like that? I mean, are you leaving out things like, yeah, right? If you're meeting with a federal buyer or me, how about you throw in yes? Don't call me bro or whatever. Like, and I use dude because I'm really old apparently, and I use an old thing. But I say that, but I don't say it in the meetings, right? I don't say it when I'm meeting with customers. And so there's things you can do to develop that and go, oh, let me change it from yeah to yes. Simple things begin to basically look the same as a collared shirt in the way you speak. The next thing is technology. If you're on virtual meetings in particular, some of the reasons you're not getting kind of traction and you're not getting called back is because they weren't impressed with you professionally in the first place. And if you can't impress me with the technology and with this meeting, then how can I expect you're going to give me a solution, especially if you're a professional services company, right? Maybe we'll cut slack for the construction firms who don't spend as much time in the computer world. But for the rest of us, if we're having a virtual meeting, did you set the camera so it's shining here up under my nose? Or like, did you set it too high and you're looking up? Did you think to just put it there? Did you take the time to say, how does this look? Ask a friend, ask a PTAC. Those counselors are awesome, right? You can ask anybody, hey, can you give me some advice on where my camera should be? The quality of your camera, right? If you're going to be in the professional world, and I am kind of knocking you a little bit. I don't mean to be mean, but I'm trying to knock it with tough love in the sense of saying, if you're going to be in the professional world, then make sure you got a really good Wi-Fi connection. If you have to convince your company to pay for more internet connection, get it. But those kind of things where you're staggering in and out, those just begin to appear unprofessional, and it makes me put that unprofessional doubt into your solution, even though your solution could be the best thing in the whole world. It's like, that's not even this. This is Comcast. It's not me. But your technology and how you run the meeting, that's up to you. The next one is, how is your prep and your control of the meeting? And what I mean by this lends also into professionalism. Do I feel like you came prepared to the meeting, or were you completely unprepared? I sat in a meeting once with a small business professional and somebody who had been running late. So the small business pro asked if I would double up with them. I said, sure, I don't care. And so they came in and they talked first and ended up talking the whole time, but they were completely unprepared. They were asking, first off, they had that whole paper shuffle thing that I was talking about. So there's no focus there. But more importantly, it was really obvious they did not research what that buyer, that agency sold, even at a high level. I don't mean that when you go down in the details, it's a little harder to know, but you should have a general idea that the Navy fights wars on water and Army fights wars on land, right? And so that kind of level, that's your prep. You have an understanding of basically who you're meeting with on the other side. And it's pretty quick to be able to communicate that. There's this great line out there, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And if you show up unprepared, it kind of is communicating, I didn't care enough about this meeting or about you to do the research that I could have done. I always like to say, don't research anybody until you get a meeting scheduled. But once it's scheduled, invest 2 to 4 hours of making sure you have that preparation done. You have a good understanding of who they are, what you want to talk about, so that you can control the meeting. And in the control the meeting, I mean in a way that they can see this meeting logically progressing in a way that you wanted, and they will have success from as well, right? They will get something out of this, but they see you guiding it forward. An example of controlling the meeting is having a call plan. So when you go into a meeting, a project management meeting, if you're familiar with this, we tend to have agendas. Well, sales calls should be the exact same thing. And anywhere where you're trying to proceed towards a contract, that's a sales call. Doesn't matter what level it is. And so you should prepare a call plan that has an objective that you're trying to get out of this, a purpose that you can communicate with the other person saying, hey, can I just clarify the purpose of this meeting is to yada, yada, yada. Does that sound good to you? Yes, good. You're instantly taking control of the meeting by getting them and you to be on the same page of of why are we even having the meeting? And then the last part of a call plan is you would have questions already written out that will guide that meeting. And my favorite thing to do is to tell people, I got a call plan and I got 7 questions I'm hoping to get through in our conversation with you. It lets them know instantly that I prepared, that I cared enough that I prepared, that I have 7 questions, and they're going to start checking it off in their own mind. When you do these things, all of these individually and collectively demonstrate your professionalism to the other person. When they see you and your company as a professional company, it makes them want to have a second meeting. It makes them want to call you back. Okay, so let's tackle the last one. And this one I think is the one that's the most around sales. So the first one is just persistence. The second one on not impressing them professionally, that's just really around the skill of professionalism and sharpening yourself. And by the way, if you ever want me to do training, I never teach on that. But if you ever think I should, put that in the chat. That just lets me know, whether I should. I don't want to presume to ever teach that thing, but I will presume to teach this, which is sales. So the last reason on why federal buyers aren't calling you back is that they didn't see that you could help them. You were in the meeting with them, and somehow at the end of the meeting, they didn't feel any reason to have to meet with you again. And so in here, I mentioned, I talked a little bit about value proposition. Sometimes I don't like that word because it's such a broad term that it's like a wind theme. No one consistently defines it. A lot of us will define it, but not often will we all define it the same way compared to something else that might be clear to each of us the exact same way. So value proposition, though, what I really was thinking about here is that the value proposition clearly comes down to what's in it for me. We call that WIFM, or we have for decades, right? WIFM, W-I-I-F-M, what's in it for me? And so when you're thinking in a meeting about how you can connect with that buyer again, that federal buyer again, you want to make sure that throughout the meeting, you're able to communicate and they're able to understand what's in it for them. What's the value proposition for them if they buy your solution or if they just keep meeting with you? Sometimes the value proposition doesn't have to be so far out there, features, benefits, all this stuff. It could just be, oh, I'm getting a much better understanding of where I might want to take our data science solutions and needs, or not solutions, but science needs and requirements. And I might be able to flesh them out more with this person and have a conversation. That's why they would want to meet with you again, is because they can see something in it for them when they meet with you again. And so I give you a couple of tips on how you can do that. When we go in, we are the most clear about what our solution can solve, what problems or needs our solutions can address, right? We know it very clearly, and we have to slow it way down, because we understand it all, but they're still back here. Not that they're slow, but our solution's up here and the problem's back here. We have to get them to admit that there's a problem, right? And in sales, we call this an implied need. So an implied need is one that, yeah, I got it, but I don't feel any urgency to solve it. That's totally cool. That's where sales begins, is you're getting them to discuss some of their future plans and what they hope they could do. Like I talk about, AI is here, right? A lot of people are trying to figure out what to do with AI. Well, there's no explicit need for a lot of them, but they have an implied need. I'd like to get some of that AI benefit I keep hearing about, right? And so implied need are these kind of problems that are out there that, yeah, I'll talk about them, right? But I'm not feeling motivated to do anything about it. And in our meetings, and when you think about how can I get called back, you need to help them, and not in a massive way. Sales is about incremental movements forward. You want to help them turn those implied needs into explicit needs, or you're turning them into explicit needs. You're trying to get them to see them as explicit needs. And the difference between an implied need and an explicit need is one does not require immediate action, the other does. So an example is, if I get a scratch on my car and it's just ugly and I hate it, and I go to the dealer and maybe I'm going to get a new car, but it's fine, right? That's an implied need that I either need a paint job or I need a new car. I guess a new car is pretty far stretch, but good salesperson. But implied need, right? Oh, you need to fix this. No, I don't. It's ugly, but I don't need to fix it. But an explicit need, imagine if my brakes were soft, right? So if my brakes are soft, not out yet, but if they're out, if they're soft, and it's like, yeah, it's sometimes I feel like I'm pushing harder on the brakes to slow it down. Wow, that must be a little scary. Nah, it's not that big of a deal. Are your kids usually with you in the car? Yeah, they're in the back. And so what would happen if you hit a stop sign and you needed to slam on the brakes? Would it slow down less or more? It'd probably take a few minutes. And what would happen if you're in the intersection and a car comes the other way and slams into your car with your kids in it? Right? And you don't have to do this graphic, but we're turning an implied into an explicit need. It's like, what the heck am I thinking? These soft brakes need to be replaced. I'm turning it into an explicit need. In federal sales, it takes a lot longer. What you're trying to do is to figure out through problem questions and implication questions, what are the problems you're having and who else is impacted by it? For example, we had servers that went out when I was working at the White House that impacted the Secret Service all the way around the world, who couldn't get back to all the data they needed to be able to protect the president in different places. These are big deals, but they're just thinking servers and I got to get a new server. It's like, no. You need to get that thing fixed immediately at twice the price or whatever, right? Because those people can't do their job, and their job is to protect the president of the United States. You're turning things into a bigger deal. And so you want to help the buyer see where you're fitting, right? And you're not trying to sell everything. I'm pushing all this into one slide. But what I'm trying to say is if you want to get called back, help them see where you can fit. Help them see where there's an implied need. I'd like to come back and talk to you about that need more and pull a few threads, right? I didn't even turn it into an explicit need. I'm just saying I want to come back and pull some more threads. Well, now I'm helping them see where I would fit. Okay, so I'm rushing out of time. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First off, never give up. If they're not calling you back, it's because they probably didn't even know you called. Just keep persisting. Professionalism is a skill that you can develop. Start with one thing, work on it, work on the next. Right? Just start with a collared shirt or whatever the equivalent is. And the last thing is help your customers see with them. What's in it for me? If they don't see what's in it for me from their perspective, then they really don't have a motivation or a reason to talk to you afterwards. Okay, I'm out of time. I want to make sure we respect it. Remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.